Do you think nib creep can hinder ink flow? I've noticed on both my Pilot Custom 74 and 92, and with either Noodler's Bad Blue Heron and Bad Belted Kingfisher, that there's a fair bit of ink that dries on the top of the slit due to nib creep, more so than other pens. It doesn't seem to be as much of a problem on steel nibs. Would it be best to wash it off periodically between full flushes or cleans? Okay, so this is a pretty classic kind of nib creep question. You know, you're using a couple of inks here that are fairly lubricated. So this is two of the Noodler's Warden series inks, which are very, very permanent inks, and there's some added lubricant in there because those inks tend to be pretty dry. So I have a Pilot Custom 74 right here. There does tend to be some nib creep that's on it, especially if you carry it around a little bit. It's not unusual to get a little bit of spatter that can come out of that with a variety of inks. I'm looking right now, and I actually don't have a lot of nib creep in, I got Diamine Marine in here right now. I don't have a lot of nib creep on here, but it's not unusual to have that happen, especially with some of the Noodler's inks. So the nib creep, it really doesn't affect the flow of your pen. Now, there are some inks that there may be like a correlation between some flow challenges, I guess, and how much it will creep, but that's really more of a consequence of the ink itself and not really the pen. So it's definitely the case that there's more nib creep with some pen and ink combinations than with others. There are aspects of the nib design and things like that that can affect the nib creep, but usually it's the ink that will be a big factor there. So I would say that you don't need to stress it too much. Just exercise normal pen hygiene. Cleaning your pen every few weeks, 2 to 3 weeks, should do just fine. Unless you write a lot, then maybe try to do it a little more often than that. Maybe a good rule of thumb is like every 4 fills. Or every 3 weeks, something like that. Let's just go with that. So that would be a pretty good schedule for you to clean your pens there. And I think if you're getting some nib creep on it, I know there's a natural tendency to want to like wipe it off. Of course, then when you do, it just kind of pulls more ink out of there. I wouldn't really sweat it too much. It's really an aesthetic thing. It's not affecting the flow of the ink. Even if it's drying on top of the nib, that's really just because that ink is exposed right up to the air there. But if it's in the feed of the pen, it's really not going to dry out very quickly. And the ink that's behind it is going to kind of reconstitute it. And if you're writing with any kind of regularity, you're going to be okay. Now, if it does dry on there and you just would feel more comfortable, you could, of course, do a full cleaning, but you don't really need to necessarily. If you want to, just get a little cup of, like a little Dixie cup of water. And you can just kind of swirl the nib around in the water real quick. Any ink that's dried on there will immediately be reconstituted by that water, and then you can go on writing. It might seem a little watery at first, but then it'll go on. Or if you have a little sink, a couple of drips, and you just kind of put it under the faucet as it drips. Of course, that might splatter ink all over your sink, so maybe you don't want to do that, but that can help. Or if you have a wet paper towel, just a paper towel that you keep handy, wet it up a little bit and kind of wipe the nib to kind of get anything off of there. I think that all you would need. Don't have to necessarily do a full cleaning, so give that a shot.